There's no doubt.
Frank Wotherspoon is the head of the Newcastle Permanent Building Society, the Hunter region's largest home finance organisation. He described the government's decision to subsidise the banks in favour of other home lending institutions as rampant discrimination. He said unless the same subsidy was offered to other institutions, such as the Newcastle Permanent, interest rates on existing loans could be forced up.
If building societies don't receive a similar subsidy, then the reality is, because we are subject to market forces, because I believe that banks will be bidding up the price of deposit funds, building societies will have to do likewise, and in order to fund this, there will be increases in interest rates to existing borrowers from societies.
Could the government prevent building societies from matching the bank's new rates?
The Minister has that power. I tend to believe it would not be exercised. I believe that he would recognise the inevitability of the economic forces at play, and that in fact building societies would be permitted to increase interest rates to borrowers.
The Newcastle Master Builders Association, however, today reacted with confidence to the government's decision, saying it would help the local housing industry.
You've got to be confident, because we are at a stage where no money is being lent, and if this is the needed incentive to bring money back into the market, it's got to be good for us all.
Still, your sentiments aren't shared by State Housing Minister Frank Walker. He has described it as the biggest mistake the federal government has made to date. What's your reaction to that?
I wouldn't like to get into the politics of that. All I would say is if there's no money in the market, somebody's got to come up with an idea that will bring some back into it. And if this doesn't do that, I'd be very surprised.
What if interest rates don't come down?
Traditionally, they've always come down, and I see no reason to think that they won't come back again to lower levels.
Perfect conditions were laid on at the Jockey Club Greens today for the playoffs in the round-robin competition. The winners of the two sections after the 4 days of play, Estelle Cook from Victoria and Eve Wilshire from Newcastle South, played off for the top place. Estelle Cook, going into the day's play, remained undefeated and maintained that form to take out the final, beating two times winner of the NJC round-robin and Commonwealth Games representative Eve Wilshire 31-23. It was a major win for the Victorian State Singles Champion, who relished the fast conditions. In the playoffs for third and fourth, Dorothy Roche from Rose Hill defeated New South Wales representative Pam Ellis 31-17.
If you said the pumpkin pickers put the heat on the Seagulls, you'd be right, as it was close to 40 degrees on the ground, and this took its toll on both defences, and it was a high-scoring match. It ended up 6 tries to 4, with this man, Lakes United fullback Peter Parsons, scoring 3.
I'm getting mixed
Others
up with
went
Gary.
to rep centre Trevor Tuckwell and winger Mark Bates, with Mick Sullivan, who's just returned from a stint in France. Maitland's 4 tries included this little gem from Peter Jones, who knocked back a St George offer. And of course this one from a good player too, in Greg Clyde. And now let's look at Tuckwell's try and the fortunes of football.
Small businesses on the Central Coast are closing down more frequently than ever before, and the remaining shopkeepers are concerned. In a bid to halt this trend, they intend to set up a small business council to lobby the government for assistance.
Join Ray Deneen and Anna Manzoni for all the news tonight at 6.
start from the meeting.
15 women have enrolled in the adult education program, all are over the age of 25 and have previous office skills. It's the first time that the scheme has been jointly run with the Commonwealth Employment Service, and after 15 weeks, the women will have gained modern skills in bookkeeping, business communications, career development and general office practices. A large part of the program will be spent in the college's new computer room, mastering the skills of word processing. It seems that over the past few years, small businesses in particular are looking to employ seniors in positions which require added responsibility. And the principal of Glendale Take, John Townsend, says that demand is increasing.
There's such a range of people who have left the workforce some years ago, have raised children and now would like the opportunity to return. What they're finding, of course, is that things have changed during that time, so they need these new skills, the skills that are provided in this particular program.
And how will that help them re-enter the workforce?
Well, at the completion of the program, they'll have had 15 weeks of very, very intensive training. So they'll be very, very saleable to an employer. A person who is mature and also has the skills must be in demand today.
This was a fashion show with a slight twist, but for the Newcastle branch of Red Cross it was a great success. The branch decided to organise a cocktail hour fashion show, a chance for the public to see the latest, enjoy drinks and hors d'oeuvres, and since the night was still young, go out after if they wished. The idea attracted a capacity crowd of more than 200 people, who all seemed to appreciate the clothing from Katie's, and in particular the furs and leathers made by Aqua. Not quite as warm, but just as appealing was the lingerie from Red Rose. Red Cross estimates the show raised at least $1,000 for its new telephone security service, and the success of the night means it is almost certain to be held again. The information night at the Belmont Senior Citizens Centre was organised by the Asthma Supportive Members Association. The audience was told by Dr. Richard Henry from the Mater Hospital that asthma is a common disease. In a study conducted by Professor Anne Walcock on school-aged children in the Belmont area, it was discovered that 1 in 5 suffer from some form of asthma at some time. A similar incidence was noted in Wagga, and Professor Walcock concluded that the disease is equally common in all areas of Australia, regardless of climate or pollution problems. According to Dr. Henry, asthma in children is sometimes not recognised, and breathing difficulties are often attributed to other causes. The audience were given practical advice on how to recognise asthma, and told that it is an easily treatable disease.
It can be right if the asthma is severe, and if it's chronic, and if it's unrecognised, and if it's poorly treated. However, if it's recognised and treated properly, and we've got lots of very good drugs for asthma, there's absolutely no reason why it should be debilitating. Even further, there's no reason why the child with asthma shouldn't live a completely normal life. That is, to play the centre forward in the soccer and to go on camps and do everything else other children do.
Conditions for this year's harvest were ideal, with most of the major wineries reporting high yields. Leading vigneron Murray Tyrrell says wines produced from this vintage will have a number of distinctive qualities, including a full fruit flavour, plenty of acid and a soft, full palate.
We've just spent the last 3 or 4 days looking at all those young wines, because it's now time to appraise them and decide what we're going to do with some of them and see that they're developing all right. We still have a lot of wine yet fermenting, but I think it's clear that it's exciting to be in the winery tasting these wines, and they are of the highest quality that we'd ever want or wish to make, and it's going to be an absolutely great vintage, both red and white.
But as with other parts of the rural sector, Murray Tyrrell says federal government policy is stifling the wine industry.
The criminal thing that's happened in this country is with government interference into the Australian wine industry, that we're forced to put our wines on the market and drink them far too young. And when you have a great vintage like this, the tragedy is going to be that these wines are going to be drunk far too early. Good wine is always very drinkable, and it's going to be a tragedy to the country really to see these wines being drunk at the early stage they're going to be, because I feel that the Hunter Valley, I haven't seen the rest of Australia, but the Hunter Valley, if we were allowed to mature these wines for 5, 6 or 7 years, this would put Australia on the map as a wine country. But if we're just going to put them out and have to drink them before the yeast gone out of them and they have time to mature, well, we're being deprived, and the public are being deprived of the great taste sensations of quality wine.
The meeting passed 3 resolutions: to ban unpaid work, to hold 1-hour stop work meetings at all branches to inform members of progress, and to hold a general meeting on or before May 27. The dispute centres on permanency and all the benefits that go with it, such as superannuation, right of appeal and job security. This problem affects parking patrol officers and school ancillary staff. The other issue is over permanent status for ongoing part-time workers who can't apply for permanent positions. About a third of the PSA's 50,000 members are affected, and the association says that the Public Service Board's proposals up until now haven't been acceptable. So what happens after today's 24-hour strike?
Well, the first thing that'll happen is that the membership will become all aware of what the issues are, and the government will see that the membership is concerned enough to take concerted action, and there will be more negotiations between the government and the PSA.
Do you think you'll win this battle for permanency in part-time work?
Yes, I'm certain that we'll win it, because it's quite clear that the permanency that they're offering in respect of part-time work is secondary to what the Commonwealth has granted for its own people, and it is by far and away a lot less than what is being offered in respect of permanent public servants generally.
Conditions for this year's harvest were ideal, with most of the major wineries reporting high yields. Murray Tyrrell, for one, is brimming with confidence about the vintage, saying the wines will feature a full fruit flavour, plenty of acid and a soft, full palate. Murray says these wines will be of the highest quality.
1986, as most people know, and we've all talked about it, has been an absolutely wonderful vintage. I don't think, and I'm sure now in my time in the industry, we haven't seen one as good. It's exciting to be in the winery tasting these wines, and they are of the highest quality that we'd ever want or wish to make, and it's going to be an absolutely great vintage, both red and white.
Sadly, most of the wines will be put on the market before their time. The federal government taxes any wine held in stock by winemakers, forcing them to sell the wines before they have had time to mature to their full potential. Murray Tyrrell says Australia cannot take its place as a great winemaker under the present policy.
We were allowed to mature these wines for 5, 6 or 7 years. This would put Australia on the map as a wine country, but if we're just going to put them out and have to drink them before the yeast gone out of them and they have time to mature, well, we're being deprived, and the public are being deprived of the great taste sensations of quality wine.
Well,
I think it's a very exciting thing. What I'm working for is try and build the whole network throughout Australia. The National Science Centre will help to encourage the development of these centres by mutual collaboration. And that's why I'm here in Newcastle today, to look at ways in which Newcastle and Canberra can combine to our mutual benefit. And I think nothing but good can come out of them.
Dr. Gore praised the supernova display, saying it was a result of a surge of public interest in the hands-on style of science education. The display is reflecting that interest and at the moment is almost bursting at the seams with modules and visitors. According to Supernova's director, Professor Tim Roberts, it's hoped that following the Council Administration's recent acceptance of the revised plan for a regional museum, the display can eventually move over to the old brewery site. He says, however, that details on some funding applications are still being awaited.
I'd like to see Supernova expand as much as possible. We have already a group of people working for us. If I could find money to keep them on, I would like to very much. I'd like us to go into our own building, to have 10 times the space we have now and to be open 7 days a week.
By 4:45 this afternoon, both the players and spectators had hoped the prizes would have been presented and the celebrations well and truly underway, but it was not to be. Ron Dawson from Warners Bay and lesser favourite Neil Robson, also from Warners Bay, battled for over 3.5 hours in the exciting climax to the tournament. Heading into the last end, the score was drawn 30 ends all, but eventually there had to be only one winner. Ron Dawson 31-30 in 39 ends. Both players competed against 64 other bowlers representing 42 clubs over the 5-day championship.
If you're among the massive crowd of 30,000 people who turned out at Newcastle Beach in November last year for the finals of the BHP Steel International, then the excitement of the world's richest surfing tournament will still be a strong memory. If, on the other hand, you are part of the huge television audience, then you have the consolation of knowing you are watching the best live coverage of a surfing event anywhere in the world. 3 weeks ago, NBN won the award for the best live surfing coverage in Australia. Last night at the Continental Hotel in Sydney, NBN received the World Media Award for the best television coverage on the Association of Surfing Professionals World Circuit. The award was accepted by NBN Television manager James Mark Anthony on behalf of NBN Limited.
I stand up here as the producer of the BHP Steel International, the NBN BHP Steel International, but it's a team of people like Rob Short, Graham Gallagher, Peter Brown, Nat Jeffries. They're people that got behind this tournament and said, okay, let's run with it and let's try and do it right.
Last night also saw the crowning of the new men's world champion, American Tom Curran, the winner of the BHP Steel International. The women's champion was also crowned, with Frida Zamba of Florida making it a double for the Americans. Today's one-day seminar was put on by the Australian College of Nursing Central Northern Division. It was their first refresher day of the year, and the main aim was to bring nurses up to date with changes and issues in their line of work. Topics today included college-based nursing programs, professional pathways for nurses, and the implementation of the Richmond Report. Speakers included department heads from college nursing courses and 2 from local mental hospitals. One of the main issues today was on the topic of restructuring nurses' positions in clinical work to enable advancement without a shift to administration or education work. The College of Nursing is a charitable organisation which helps registered nurses go on to further education. At present, they are suffering from a lack of support and they're hoping for new memberships to help them continue their work.